the fuel manifolds, we could hear the fuel rumble down these huge pipes.
The sound and reverberations come from those engines, those 5 engines, when they're ignited. It shakes the whole body, the reverberations from it. It's very emotional.
In the Shadow of the Moon is a new documentary about the Apollo space program. This uses a lot of NASA footage to go back to the Apollo space program that went through the late 60s into the early 70s, climaxing, of course, with the landing of Apollo 11 on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. This movie takes you along, puts you in the space capsule, and it's told from the perspective of the men who went there.
Yeah, that's what was different for it for me. I wasn't alive when we went to the moon. I was born some years later. Mm-hmm. And, if you even half pay attention in school, or you see movies like Apollo 13, and Ron Howard, the director of that film, is presenting this one, none of the big events leading up to this, from President Kennedy's challenging the space program to put a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s to the actual landing, will shock or surprise anyone. But what is interesting is that it is told almost completely from the astronaut's point of view, and it brings a real sense of you being there. I mean, it really feels like you're experiencing this, and the emotions of these men, and just how big this entire thing was. Yeah.
Well, the human element comes across so well, the warm element, because what we experienced as we watched the broadcast, and still some of the occasional tapes and the conversation between the spacecraft and the Houston base, everything is such technical jargon that this finally gives us the human perspective. And it occurred to me that these men, who are all now in their 70s, have had years to consolidate their impressions into exactly, let's call it, eloquent sound bites.
After the flight of Apollo 11, the three of us went on a around-the-world trip. Wherever we went, people, instead of saying, well, you Americans did it, everywhere they said, we did it. We, humankind, we, the human race, we people did it. From Europeans, Asians, Africans, wherever we went, it was we finally did it. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. Ephemeral, but wonderful.
So this story, it's old history, and yet for a lot of people, I think it's presented in a fresh way that'll make it new and interesting.
Right, and there were a lot of historical clips that I had not seen before. Some really fantastic shots. One I'm thinking of in particular is one of the techs working on one of the boosters on the back of a rocket, and it slowly pulls out to kind of reveal that this thing is the size of a large building, you know. So
with wires everywhere.
Yeah, it's just little shots like that kind of really nail home.
It's whether you lived through it, witnessed it firsthand. Even then, you couldn't get the perspective that you can from this movie. So, In the Shadow of the Moon, we strongly recommend it.
Look at that! Unbelievable!
I felt that I was literally standing on God's front porch.
I remember thinking, my God, that little thing is so fragile out there.
That jewel of Earth was just hung up in the blackness of space.